following is my own opinion and not the opinion of any studios I've worked for in the past or will work for in the future. All specific information comes courtesy of publicly accessible articles. Please see the bibliography in the info section of this video. In my view, the single most important genre of film has been largely ignored. Since you're capable of reading video titles, it would be silly of me to pretend I haven't already given the game away. That's right, folks, we're here to discuss why horror is the salvation of film as an art form. I'm going to tackle this topic by discussing the invaluable impact the genre has had on 4 fronts: artistic, economic, societal, and industrial. Right off the bat, you know it and I know it, there are so many incredible horror films out there. That's not what this section is about. Those who are the most dismissive of horror as a genre are typically people who've never given the genre a fair shake and probably never will. When discussing basic narrative genres, a good way to determine the health of a genre is to see how many other genres it can encompass without losing itself in the mashup. Often mistakenly thought of as a niche genre, horror easily surpasses many main genres with its ease of adaptability when combined with all kinds of other movies. Now, this would mean absolutely nothing if the results were hot garbage. However, this is where horror shines. Here's a quick overview of just how high quality and in-depth this plays nice with others mentality goes when it comes to horror. I'll show the film's Rotten Tomatoes score in question, and I'm doing this to give a stark contrast to another score. The average Rotten Tomatoes score for all the Best Picture Academy Award nominees for 2020, which is 88.7%. You'll find that I list many examples near or exceeding that score. Horror action, Aliens, Train to Busan, 28 Days Later, The Raid Redemption, They Live, horror adventure, Us, Annihilation, It, The Descent, Creature from the Black Lagoon, horror comedy, Evil Dead 2, Housebound, What We Do in the Shadows, Young Frankenstein, Shaun of the Dead, horror crime/gangster, The Silence of the Lambs, Green Room, Misery, Don't Breathe, I Saw the Devil, horror drama, The Wailing, The Babadook, A Dark Song, 10 Cloverfield Lane, The Girl with All the Gifts, horror romance, Let the Right One In, The Shape of Water, Spring, Only Lovers Left Alive, Warm Bodies, horror historical, The Devil's Backbone, The Witch, The Conjuring, The Others, I Sell the Dead, horror musical, Little Shop of Horrors, The Lure, Sweeney Todd, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Anna and the Apocalypse, horror sci-fi, Alien, A Quiet Place, The Host, The Fly, The Thing, horror war, Death Dream, Overlord, Predator, The Bunker, Jacob's Ladder, horror western, Bone Tomahawk, Near Dark, Mohawk, The Wind, The Burrowers. And these are just some of the examples I could think of. There are many more out there, I'm sure. I wasn't kidding when I said the horror genre really can be successfully melded with any other genre. It's the secret spice of narrative risk-taking. When we get into the economic and entertainment industry sections of this discussion, you'll see why such experimentation is cultivated within this genre in specific. For now, though, it's important to appreciate just how wide the range has been pushed by various filmmakers over the years. Now this begs the question, how is horror able to master genre shapeshifting when other more established genres have not? This, as with everything in the film industry, ties directly to the economics of getting a movie made. Why do so many mega-budget blockbuster tentpole movies feel so safe and unimaginative? A large part of it is that they're trying to include everything they think every demographic wants to see, without including everything they think will rub one demographic the wrong way. Marvel wants you to see the 40th movie in their unending series of movies with your kid brother, your parents, your grandmother, and the weird uncle who thinks he's cooler than he is. This lack of creative exploration isn't necessarily an artistic failing on behalf of the filmmaker, it's a financial choice on behalf of the production company making the film. Their motive when risking so much money isn't one born of creativity or a desire to make art. These gigantic movies aren't greenlit because of the story they could tell, they're greenlit because they can get as many butts in seats as possible. That's just reality. A gigantic budget is a massive gamble. On a $150 million to $200+ million budget, you need to be sure you're going to make a minimum of triple that money back in order to make a nice profit, pay for the movie, and cover all marketing costs. This is why it's so rare to see a blockbuster with a unique voice, an unusual story structure, boundary-pushing themes, or a compelling and fresh aesthetic. In contrast, horror films are generally low-budget affairs. There's very little on the line for the studio, so they can afford to be a bit more hands-off when it comes to the director's vision. This results in more risks being taken, which results in one of two things: something really special or something really bad. A dud is easy for the studio to accept since they spent very little to begin with, but a success? On such a small budget, a success is a much bigger deal. In terms of return on investment, documentaries lead the way with horror films following. After that come recorded recorded concerts, of all things, go figure. When it comes to returns, horror is the best bet out of all narrative genres, and I strongly believe this is because there's less at stake monetarily. It turns out, art flourishes when stockholders are muzzled. If they fail, the studio doesn't have to get on an investor's conference call and announce it'll lose as much as $190 million from one film. Don't expect Hollywood to give up on blockbusters anytime soon, though. As ex-Disney CEO Bob Iger put it, we still think the tentpole strategy is a good strategy. That one way to rise above the din and the competition is with a big film. Not just a big budget, but a big story, big cast, big marketing behind it. I think this mentality fully explains Disney's upcoming slate of movies, overwhelmingly jam-packed with high-budget remakes, sequels, and cash-grab nostalgia pandering. They're making a product, and if it ends up being art, it is in spite of their intentions. I think it's a bit of an understatement to say that the film industry generally doesn't have a lot of respect for horror as a genre. Heck, in order for a horror film to get any major awards, it typically needs to be marketed as a thriller, a genre which is essentially just horror in a tuxedo. This lack of respect is based on the popular misconception that Hereditary and Friday the 13th are the same type of movie. They're both horror, right? The monocle crowd scoffs. While this is incredibly frustrating for fans of the genre, it really does have its benefits. When you're not competing with pandering nonsense like Green Book or Joker for Best Picture, you can really go nuts with your movie. There's nobody to please, no committees to butter up. This lack of expectation combined with the typically low budget creates a perfect condition for maintaining the purity of vision filmmaking requires as an art form. Some movies are terrible. Some movies are incredible. But I would rather watch a terrible movie the filmmaker put his soul into rather than a mediocre yet soulless movie created by a committee. For example, that's why The Room is so much more fun to watch than Justice League. It's why Troll 2 is a crowd-pleasing delight, while Ant-Man has all the explosive flavor of a damp cardboard box. Good, bad, it doesn't always matter. Unique is always better than bland. Allowing filmmakers to experiment and push any boundary they see fit results in striking social progress decades before it's safe enough for blockbusters to even try a weak sauce version of the same thing. Since the horror genre typically has so much freedom, there is certainly a lot of regressive garbage out there, but not nearly as much as you might think. A lot of horror tropes are downright progressive behind the curtain. Consider the following: vampires being equated with old world, wealth, wretched excess, depravity, and colonialism. Zombies, cannibals, equaling the third world rising up to devour the first world that's been built on the fruits of their labor. The Frankenstein monster being man's desire to procreate without the need for the female womb. The witch hunter cycle from the 70s revealing witch trials to basically be an excuse to persecute attractive, unmarried, independent, or unmanageable women. Backwoods and inbred clans like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Just Before Dawn, and The Devil's Rejects, representing the absolute perversion of the American pioneer ideal. The 60s featured horrors that were existential, like Hitchcock's The Birds or Romero's Night of the Living Dead, where bad things just happen because they happen and innocents suffer for no reason in an indifferent universe. By the 80s, the conservative movement had convinced Americans that all of our problems stems from alien invaders who, like the Christian devil, were inherently evil, bent on the destruction of home, hearth, and family, against whom we must circle the wagons and defend our homeland, and be ever vigilant for traitors within our midst. But even in a film like Alien, the real villain was a corporate structure which placed no value on the individual beyond company profit. From Night of the Living Dead to Get Out, horror as a genre wraps difficult conversations into a non-confrontational package of thrills and chills. Anything brave or controversial in a blockbuster has already been done to death in the horror circle. While people were tripping over themselves on social media to bless DC and Marvel for being so brave for making Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, fans of Ellen Ripley were sitting in the back wondering why it took those studios so long to capitalize on something already established as a good idea in the 70s and 80s. Long story short, anyone who scoffs at the supposed lack of morality in horror movies probably hasn't seen many horror movies. Artistically, horror is the last true playground for filmmakers. Economically, horror has the highest return on investment when it comes to fiction films. Within film industry circles, the general lack of respect from awards shows keeps the genre in a concentrated bubble, free from external distraction. And socially, the horror genre has always had a wealth of insightful, meditative, and substantive points of view to offer any audience brave enough to dig a little deeper. I believe horror is the salvation of film. Let me know what your top 5 favorite horror films are in the comments. Liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing, these are all ways you can really help us out, and it's certainly appreciated. This has been Cinema Cemetery, digging 6 feet deeper into film and culture. Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, give us a like. If you didn't, don't.
you.